I'm gonna love you.
Hey, welcome back to Dan's Chess Lounge, everyone. Today I have a great game to bring to you guys. It's with Viktor Korchnoi versus Garry Kasparov. Now, this game took place at the 1982 Chess Olympiad, and it was a big battle between Kasparov and Karpov versus everyone else. Now, Karpov was the #1 board. He was clearly the best player in the world still, but Korchnoi was right behind at #2, and then you had Kasparov, a young Garry Kasparov, tactician, coming up. He was 19 years old at the time, and he was playing board #2 on the Soviet Union's team. And everyone knows about the personal dislike between Korchnoi and Karpov, and Karpov didn't want to play against Korchnoi, so he deferred to Kasparov, and Kasparov took over board #1 in this game, this team game, Switzerland versus the USSR. So they faced off, and it was fireworks. No one really expected the game to be as riveting and exciting as it was, but it turned out being one of the craziest games in the history of chess. So let's go ahead, check out the game, and see what transpired over the board. Korchnoi started out d4. Now usually Korchnoi plays c4. He's an English player, but in this game here he wanted to see what Kasparov's full arsenal and repertoire was all about here. Knight f6, c4, g6, g3. So they're both going to Fianchetto their king side bishops and castle king side. Bishop g7, bishop g2, c5. Kasparov strikes in the center here. He wants to exchange a side pawn for a central pawn. Korchnoi pushes d5. So now you have like a modern Benoni structure right here. The advantages for white is white has a spatial advantage, and then black is going to try to break up the big central pawns and big center that white has. Black's main staple here is that he's going to try to play tactically, and that's how he's going to hold his position together, whereas white is going to play statically and just try to maintain his space advantage in his big center. d6, knight c3, developing piece, and then also halts up b5, castles, knight f3, e6. Now here you have black already starting to break up the center and chip away at the center. Castles was the move played in the game. D takes E is a variation that could have been played. This variation here is has taken place in many games. Let's see what transpires here if D takes E would have taken place. Bishop takes, knight g5, opening up the bishop on the long diagonal. Bishop takes pawn. Now the bishop takes here, threatening the rook on a8. Knight moves to d7. Bishop takes rook. Queen takes bishop. And at the end of this position here, of this long variation here, white gives up its most powerful bishop here. And then black gives up his rook for it. So white is up in exchange, but he gives up his great bishop. So he's exposed on the light squares on the king side. So it's sort of like an even trade-off. Both players, Korchnoi and Kasparov, didn't feel like they wanted to explore this line here. So instead, they didn't play this. Korchnoi just castled here, move 8. E takes D, C takes D. Now you have A6 with the threat of playing B5 and B4, expanding on the queen side. And then white plays a schematic A4, which stops B5. Just as a side note, when you guys are playing your games in these Benoni type structures like this, anytime your opponent plays A6, make sure you play A4 because you don't want them to expand on that queen side with B5 and then B4 and then C4. Next thing you know, you're getting pawn rolled. So a good way to stop that is to play A4 when they play A6. Okay, let's continue with the game. Rook E8. Knight D2 is a good move here with the idea of going to C4 and then moving into B6 with a stronghold on black's queen side. Knight B D7. H3 protects the G4 square, which would stop the knight from moving to G4 and then following with maybe like an F5 thrust or the knight coming to G4. Now black is continuing with his plan of trying to blast through on the queen side. Knight C4, which hits the pawn on D6. And then the knight E5 move solves that. The queen now protects the D6 square and it hits the knight on C4. So white drops the knight back to A3, which is fine even though it's on the edge of the board. Everyone's heard the saying, knights on the rim is dim. But it's fine for now because white is planning on playing F4, kicking the knight on E5, and then the white knight can then come back to C4. So Korchnoi is fine with the knight going to A3 for the moment. Knight H5 with the idea of playing F4. And then it also stops white from playing F4. Black wants to play F5 here. But if white played F4 right now, then black could just capture on G3. E4. Now the queen diagonal is opened up here. Black played an interesting move here. Black played Rook F8. Now black lost time there because he already moved it to E8. Now he's going back to F8. But this is a better move for black because the rook needs to be positioned on the F file here for the maneuvers that black wants to play coming up. If he would have played F5, there's a long continuation here from GM Timin and GM Kovacevic on how previous games continued. This is a long variation, but you guys have to see this. E takes F, bishop takes, forking the two pieces, bishop and the knight with G4. Bishop eats the pawn, and then even though the knight's in pre, black goes ahead and plays queen H4. Pawn takes knight. Rook goes to F8. The idea here is that the knight wants to come to G4, checkmating the black king on H2. Now, to stop that, white's bishop would have to go to F4. So the black rook on F8 is perfect there because then when the white bishop goes to F4, the white rook would just capture it there. So there would be nothing to stop the checkmate on H2. So that is a great line there. H6 goes further into the line. Bishop H8. Knight C4. And then knight goes to G4. Queen sack right here. Queen takes queen. And then knight takes D6 here. So at the end of this very long variation, white has won 3 of black pieces. And white is actually better here. Even though he gave up his queen, this is a winning variation for white. So let's go back and continue with the game here after this long variation. So black played rook f8, king h2. Black plays his break move f5. f4 was played. b5. Now if you notice, black's knight is being hit here. This is the theme of this entire game. Black's knight is being hit with that last f4 move here. Now, black just ignores it. He played b5 instead. So his idea is that if white captures, then he'll just play b5, forking the two knights. A takes b here. If white would have went ahead and took the knight, black plays knight takes g3, king takes, bishop takes e5. If the king goes to f2, then you have bishop d4, bishop blocks, bishop takes bishop, king takes, and then queen g5 check. King goes back to f2, and now you finally have b4, forking both knights. Black will regain his material, and he'll also have a very strong attack. Okay, so in the game, A takes B is what transpired here. And then after that, the threat is still B4, forking the two knights. So you have knight takes pawn. So now the knight is in a much better spot than being on A3. Now it's on B5. Now don't forget, the knight on E5 is still under attack. Black plays F takes E. You have bishop takes E that was played in the game. If white would have captured the knight here, then you have bishop takes E5, hitting the G3 square with the knight and the bishop. The attack will be very, very strong here. So Korchnoi played bishop E4. Now you have bishop D7, hits the knight. You have two attackers on the knight. Queen E2, which protects the knight. And if you notice, black's knight on E5 is still hanging. That's the crazy part about this game. Black's knight is still under attack here. Kasparov plays queen b6, which protects the pawn on d6, and he also adds another attacker to the knight on b5. So the knight retreats to a3. You have rook be8, which is an indirect threat on the queen on e2 if the pieces move out the way. Now really this here, bishop d2, is the first bad move that Korchnoi played in the game. It's kind of crazy to think that Kasparov has been doing all of these crazy tactics without Korchnoi making any bad moves. But this move right here was his first mistake of the game. He played bishop d2 and now left the b2 square undefended, and black went ahead and took him up on it. He went ahead and captured on b2. And then Korchnoi also played, finally, F takes E5. He finally took the knight here. He should have played rook A2. Queen drops back to B8. And then he should have been more defensive. He should have just played his queen to G2. Knight goes back to F7 to reroute and to get out of being under attack. So this is how Korchnoi should have continued here. But instead, he played F takes E, finally taking the knight, and now he unleashed an attack on his king side. Bishop takes, and it's like fireworks, as you can see on the board. All of black's pieces are attacking white's king, even though he's a piece down. You have the knight hitting the g-pawn, the bishop hitting the g-pawn. You have the light square bishop hitting the h-pawn, the rook attacking the rook on f1. You still have the indirect threats of the rook on e8 hitting the queen. You have black's queen on b2 pinning and the white queen on e2. So basically you have all of black's pieces aimed at white's king side, and it's just a mess. So Korchnoi plays c4, which hits the black queen. Let's see. The threats are, you still have those threats, the bishop and the knight hitting the g3 square. You have the bishop and the queen hitting the c3 knight. There's so much going on in this game tactically. I mean, it's just a mess. And Kasparov ignores the threat to the direct threat to his queen. He plays knight takes g, rook takes, and then the queen gets out of the way of attack. And it also protects the rook. The white rook was under attack as well. So knight takes. King g2 was played in the game here. If the knight would have captured, then that quickly loses into a checkmate of knight takes, knight f3 check, followed by queen h2 checkmate. So that's why the king had to move to g2. Couldn't remove the attacker with knight takes e5. So now the queen moves to c2, which renews the threat on the c3 knight. Knight takes. Rook f2 was played in the game here, but knight d2 was a better continuation. This led to a more accurate and a much easier finish for Kasparov. So Kasparov made a slight mistake here. He played rook f2 check. And then Korchnoi surprised Kasparov by sacking his queen. He gave up his queen here for a little bit of an initiative himself. He has mate threats and he has perpetual check threats himself. So he kind of caught Kasparov off guard with the queen sack here. And also, both players were in major time trouble at this point. They have 10 moves to go to reach the time control, and they're both very low on time right here. So knight takes, and again, white is certainly not dead in this position, even though he's down as his queen. He's got mate threats, and he's got perpetual check threats. There's long calculations involved here. I'm not going to go through all the calculations, but there's definitely a lot of threats here for white. White plays rook a2 that hits the queen. Queen goes to f5. Knight takes, gets some material back. Black plays rook d3. At this point right here, the engine gives it a complete draw. The evaluation is 0.00, and that's due to the perpetual checks that white has here. Korchnoi could have gone for a perpetual check on move 32, but instead he played bishop h6 instead. On move 33, he could have gone for the perpetual check here. Rook a8 check, king g7, rook a7 here. Now the black queen attacks the white king and picks off the bishop on d2. But now knight e5 check, and then the king walks closer towards the queen side, but the king can't go to c7 though, because that will lead to the white knight on c3 coming to b5 check, and then black is going to lose the pawns in the center of the board, and then he's also going to have some mating net threats as well with both knights and the rook there. So the black king cannot go to c7. He would have to just walk back the other way. So this would be a perpetual check here. This was Korchnoi's really last hope of saving any type of saving the game and saving any type of points, a half a point. So let's go back here. He didn't play that. He played bishop h6 right here instead. And then now the black queen captured. At this point here, they're getting very low on time. They still have 7 moves left to make the time control. So at this point, they're just blitzing their moves out very fast. Rook a8 check, king f7, rook a8. Now Korchnoi is going for a cheapo. He's just trying to play rook takes a7, which would be a skewer and would win the queen. King f6. The king is trying to get to d4. And then Kasparov plays queen h3. Queen takes h3, check. And that also forks the bishop on h6. So at this point here, Korchnoi just resigned, because he's just down too much material at this point here. So with this game here, Kasparov definitely made a point and let the world know that he is a contender, and he's going to be a contender for the World Championship versus Karpov coming up. He let everyone know that he is not to be played with and messed around with. He is a tactician. His moves are brilliant that he played in this game, and this is one of the classics and best games that's ever been played on the chessboard. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed the game today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time.